Sorting and prioritizing.
Welcome to EDCA 100, Chapter 7, Sorting and Prioritizing Program Ideas. Presented by Alison Zorb, Andre Folbert, Satbir Thind, and Kevin Pierce. Why sort and prioritize program ideas? It makes the journey easy when planning a program, just like telling a story or writing an essay. We have to know where we begin and when there is a conclusion. Sometimes we may have to address the conclusion based on the final or expected outcome of the story. We must select the material based on criteria. According to SORC, there's no single set of criteria which is suitable for all adult education settings. It is likely that most priority decisions are based on a few criteria considered important by decision makers.
Sorting and prioritizing program ideas, or which ideas to choose.
The interaction model of program planning tells us there are a number of techniques. One such technique is the needs assessment to determine problems or issues. Determining if it's a training problem, we have to consider if there's a training policy in place. If there is not, we must define such a policy. Then we must define the priority. What is important or least important? Are there any factors that stop us from making it a priority?
In her course, Tara has learned about identifying program ideas as one of the steps of the interactive model of program planning. She has eagerly used a number of techniques to generate ideas for new courses or training opportunities in her organization. So now what? In her book, Caffarella states that program planners have to make decisions about whether education and training programs or alternative interventions are a more useful response. Many problems and issues are identified when a needs assessment is completed. Some may look like they require a training solution, but do they? Before Tara decides that it's a training problem, she should examine the problem to see if other issues might not be responsible. If it's not a training problem, what can it be? Well, it could be a lack of communication, low motivation, lack of support, inadequate transfer of learning activities, inappropriate reward and compensation systems, conflicting organizational norms, or even political pressures. Tara may be able to narrow down her wish list of training needs by identifying her organization's priorities, or the ones that are the most important, or finding some quick successes to start with. She will also want to keep in mind the contextual knowledge she acquired in an earlier step of the interactive model of program planning.
Which factor is the priority depends on the situation as it relates to the organization. The solution maybe is to involve other people in the organization. Other people may have input to help solve the problem. What is the factor? The factors may include people, organizational and environmental factors, cost factor, and remember, the people in the organization have a stake in the outcome.
As Tara starts analyzing and sorting through the potential training ideas, she is reminded that there are 3 factors that she can use to determine if a training program can really address the problem. These are the people factor, the organizational and environmental factors, and the cost factor. For example, in the people factor, an employee may know how to do something but decide not to follow the procedures. An environmental or organizational factor could be that employees are resisting changes because they don't agree with the way things are heading. Finally, the cost factor should take into account the time, money, and staff to develop and offer the training. There needs to be a benefit for these training costs, especially if an alternative to training is faster and less costly. Tara has started sorting through the program ideas to see if they will solve the training problem, or are related to an organizational priority, or if they could be easily implemented. She now has some guidelines to follow, but she's still finding the task difficult. As she talks it through with her colleague Mary, they agree that it might be best to involve other people within the organization in the decision-making process. After all, they all have a stake in getting it right. Tara and Mary decide to create an ad hoc group to participate in the prioritization process. They review some of the people they could invite to join them. People like past, current, or potential students, subject matter experts, volunteers, supervisors, management or administrative personnel, committee or board members, community leaders, or other stakeholders or interested parties. In the end, they select their group members based on their planning context.
In the process of selecting individuals, keep in mind that they bring to the table knowledge, skills, and experience.
Now that they have their ad hoc team in place, Tara and Mary are ready for the next step, choosing a systematic approach for prioritizing those program ideas.
There are two systematic approaches, quantitative versus qualitative, or both, when determining priority. Now that the group is in place, what's next? The group has been selected, and Tara, Mary, and the group have to decide which program ideas and needs will take priority. There are two considerations, importance or feasibility. In some cases, both importance and feasibility will factor into the decision-making process. Importance factors to consider include things such as urgency, the people affected, influence, and the magnitude of discrepancy. Feasibility factors include items such as potential results, the quality and availability of resources, the level of difficulty, and the risk assessment. The group must first determine the priority based on importance and feasibility. Here are some examples. The organization, or groups and departments within the organization, may be affected by the level of importance. The potential results and the level of difficulty may impact the feasibility of the project. There are two approaches to establishing priority ratings. The quantitative method uses a numerical rating approach which numbers the ideas put into the mix. The qualitative method uses word descriptions based on discussions. These discussions are usually a group interaction or a consultation. Quantitative priority ratings can be weighed equally or unequally. The priority rating charts are used to add numerical data and add them up to determine ranking. Qualitative priority ratings involve discussions. These could be in-depth group discussions or a series of one-on-one interactions. The process is more fluid and open to interpretation. Group discussions use word rankings such as high, medium, or low to indicate priority ratings. Qualitative rankings can be used as a standalone or together with quantitative rankings. The qualitative approach also considers the people affected, the influence, the resources, any risk assessments, political and economic and other community factors, as well as using the ratings as a starting point. Discussions occur for points of agreement and disagreement. After discussion, the ratings may be altered. What if it is not a training issue? Sometimes training is not the answer. In these cases, the performance problem often gets handed off to someone else. Program planners should still understand alternative interventions so that they can pass the problem along to the right person. Here are some examples of alternative interventions. Individual or group alternatives may include using checklists, providing regular feedback, or changing the reward system. Job or task-specific alternatives may involve job rotation, or implementing new equipment, or job elimination. Organizational alternatives may require improvements in the personnel system or a change in the organizational structure. Community-based alternatives may include using electronic support systems or providing regular feedback opportunities. Why do we use alternative interventions and how do we implement them? The most commonly used alternative initiatives are individual or job-specific. We use these because they are simpler to implement and will make a difference quickly. If we try implementing one at a time, we can evaluate how it went and make changes based on the findings. It helps build credibility by ensuring one alternative is working well before moving on to the next. Let's go one step further. According to Robert Mazur, in analyzing performance problems, solutions to performance problems are not always apparent. Selecting the best solution requires careful analysis. To assist with this process, Mazur has created a flowchart. Click the link in this slide to access the flowchart. This flowchart is an easy-to-follow guide to determine if training really is the best way to solve a performance problem, or if the problem you are experiencing should get tossed into the other pile. Sorting and prioritizing is an important function. It is a part of our journey. We have to sort the material before heading into the sunset. Prioritizing the material makes the journey easy and ensures we arrive at our final destination. Here is a list of our references. Thank you again for participating in our presentation, and we look forward to your feedback.